Hello, welcome to the VR Cauldron, and if you've been anywhere on social media and you're interested in gaming, you may have seen adverts about this little thing, this little handheld device that seems to be amazing if you listen to the TikTokers and the influencers on Instagram on those adverts in between your stories. They all think it's amazing and it's the best thing they've ever owned ever. So the company that sells this, R36s, reached out and they said, would you like to review this? Probably hoping that I was going to say it's amazing just like all those other people, but no, I'm going to tell them what the actual truth. So is it worth buying? Let's find out. Well, first of all though, what actually is it? Now, let's stop looking at the box and let's look at the actual device. So mine is in white and you seem to be able to get it in a whole host of different colors. So it is a Linux-based handheld emulator. So it looks like a Game Boy, but with extra analog sticks down there and kind of the R1, R2, L1, L2 buttons on the back. But that's just the shell that they've decided to put the Linux software in that can actually play a whole host of old arcade games ranging from Capcom arcade cabinets, all the ones that MAME, the popular emulator software, can emulate. And then consoles, PC Engine, the SNES and the NES, and also weirdly Famicom and Super Famicom, which is exactly the same but the Japanese version. Game Boy, as you might expect, but also Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advanced, and also Nintendo DS, Game Gear and PSP to round off the other handhelds, but also quite excitingly PS1. And those of you who are maybe a bit older, maybe pushing 40 or older, might be thinking, actually, PS1, there were some good games on PS1. That'd be amazing if this little thing can play that, especially because it's only about 40 quid or something. But yeah, PS1, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, and the one we all dreamed about as a kid that we couldn't afford, the Neo Geo, the ones where the games cost about £250. Now, quick specs rundown, won't take long, but the thing that you look at is a 3.5 inch diagonally 640 by 480 screen. So it's 4:3, which means the ratio is as it was back in the day, back with your old TVs. That's what they were. So it's not widescreen, but that's because all the games it's played weren't in widescreen. They were in that ratio. So that's fine, that's perfect. It's got a 64-bit A35 quad-core processor, and it's got a cheap and cheerful graphics card. There's nothing too expensive in there. They just put what it needs to be able to play the games on it. Or have they? Find out in a bit when we talk about the negatives. First of all, it came in a fairly straightforward box. This box, obviously we just saw it, there wasn't that much in there. There was an instruction manual, a screen protector kit, and a USB cable to charge in the one on the left, which says DC. So you use that one to charge it. The one over here says OTG, and in that you can actually put an external screen and other joypads. But I haven't actually got many to work. I haven't got many that are USB-C, I've got a couple and they don't work. But anyway, what is good about this little tiny device? Well, it's got loads and loads of games. So the TikTokers were not lying about that. There's really old games, and obviously because it goes up to PS1 and Dreamcast, we're talking, well, Dreamcast is actually the generation after PS1, isn't it? Because the Saturn was with a PS1. So we're talking pushing towards the 2000s. So when you see something like Ridge Racer on this and the polygons, and Ridge Racer 4 is on this, and you think, wow, that, you know, that's not too bad, that is. And on the smaller screen, it doesn't look quite as jagged as you remember. And all those old 8-bit classics with sprites, not 3D, they all look great on this. In fact, the screen, it's an IPS screen, and it does look, in the right lighting, really, really good. There is a bit of Super Street Fighter 2 from the arcade cabinet. That was the Capcom Mark III arcade cabinet. And it does look good, and it sounds good, but I am struggling to play it a bit, but more on that later. It's good for discovering old classics. Let me know in the comments if there was this game that when you're a kid that you always remember being really, really good and you wanted to play it again. For me, it was Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja, where you go along and it's kind of like Double Dragon, and you could charge up your punch. If you hold down punch, you go boom, like that. This is on here, but only the Nintendo version, and it's not as good as I remember it. But it was really cool to play it again. I wish the arcade version was on there. Luckily, there is a search function, so if you press Y on the menu, you can type it in and search for any of the games on there. But If not, you have to just choose the system you want and then go down the alphabetical list. And some of them haven't got many games on there, but most of them have got loads and loads of games. So the game library is brilliant. Obviously they're old games, so you might not want to play any of them. So only get this if you're interested in playing old games. Don't be getting this thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna download Cyberpunk and play it in the car. It won't. It's not for that. It's also really good for my son to allow him to discover the games that I loved. We put Tetris on here, so black and white Game Boy game, but obviously this is ideal for it because it looks like a Game Boy and it's tiny, and he loved it. So he discovered Tetris for the first time on this. Like I said earlier, it does Neo Geo games, so things like King of the Monsters and 1, 2 and 3, Fatal Fury, some of the games where we saw them in the arcade, we thought, wow, that looks amazing. How can I play that at home? I need a Neo Geo, which was stupid expensive, and all the games that cost hundreds of pounds. So as a kid, it was totally out of my reach. But when you start emulating, obviously you can emulate on a phone, you can emulate on different systems, you can emulate on a Steam Deck, but this is what it is, and it's on there, and it only costs 40 quid, so that's good. It's also got a micro SD card slot, so you can load extra games on, increase the storage. The battery life, not bad at all. I've had probably about 4 hours without having to recharge it again, but I reckon you might be able to push it to 5. They say 6, not sure about that. Depends on the game, I suppose. And did I mention it's cheap? That is probably the main selling point for this. For kids who just want to play a load of little games, or an adult who wants to play a load of little games, or for someone who just wants to tinker with it, see what they can add on to it and things like that. But it isn't perfect as always. So what is wrong with the R36s? Well, first of all, when you turn it on, the menu music is terrible. It's horrible. I hate it, and it's so bloody loud. Luckily, you can turn it off in the menu, but I don't like that. It is so small that when you are playing the newer games, for example, Street Fighter 2, it is really hard for me to use these buttons like that. So if I want to, I've got to hold it like that. I can't just do that because I don't know if it's a skill. Maybe there's people out there with this. There's probably going to say someone in the comments maybe saying, oh, I've got it, it's fine for me. But I think it's hard to use. And unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't plug my own controller in and use that. Also, talking about the newer games, I did notice a bit of slowdown playing some newer games. For example, Dead or Alive, which was on Dreamcast, was a bit slow and the sound was all cracking. Crash Bandicoot was a bit slow on the PS1. Like I said before, they've got libraries for Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, but also library for the Famicom Family Computer, which is the NES in Japan. And there's a lot of game overlap. So if I search a game, it'll be in both and it'll appear twice. So I don't know why they've done that. Same for Super Famicom and Super Nintendo. Why didn't they just put it all together? But I'm sure that's the kind of thing that if you do a bit of tinkering, you could probably do that yourself. Also, if you are searching for a game where there was multiple versions of it, for example, say Street Fighter 2, you might not be able to see exactly which game you're choosing. So I opened up Street Fighter 2 Turbo and I was wondering why only 3 of the buttons were working. Then I remembered from when I was a little boy that the Mega Drive version, because the Mega Drive only had 3 buttons, you had access to 3 punches, and if you wanted the free kicks, you'd have to quickly press start and the 3 buttons would change to free kicks. And if you didn't want to do that, you had to buy the special 6-button controller for the Mega Drive, which wasn't as good as the Super Nintendo because it didn't have shoulders. It had 2 rows of 3. Do you remember that? If you do remember that, let us know in the comments. Who remembers Mega CD? Who remembers 32X? Have I got that right? I think it was a 32X. You put a thing on top and it makes your Mega Drive better. The controllers themselves aren't the best. It was hard for me to do dragon punches, which was heartbreaking, and actually it was quite hard for me to do fireballs as well from Ken and Ryu, and also the as I said, in direct sunlight, you can probably see now because it is a reflective screen, it can be hard to see sometimes. You can control the brightness going up and down, but it comes out on max brightness, and if the light is low, the screen, like I said before, it looks amazing, and the viewing angle is really, really good. You can't see that now, but you can see it on the things I'm showing you on the screen. And finally, a negative that is probably just me, maybe it's just me, but it uses the Nintendo button configuration. So it goes BA rather than AB, and it goes YX rather than XY. But yeah, I think the main thing that lets this down is probably the controls when you're trying to play newer games. But if you wanted to stick to the old 8-bit games and Game Boy games and not really come past the mid-90s on it, it's brilliant. It just gives you so much nostalgia rediscovering the old games. Because the screen is small, it doesn't look like a pile of crap. However, some games aren't quite as good as you remember. And like I said, letting my son play some of these old classic games is really satisfying. And knowing that some of the games, if they were good, even though the graphics aren't as good, because they were good games, he will still play them. So, are the TikTokers right about this? Well, not really, because according to them, it's the best thing ever, and it's all they ever need, and they don't need any other consoles apart from this. This, to me, is either a bit of fun to play every now and again to pass a bit of time, or something you want to tinker with and mess about with and change all the software on it and things like that. Obviously, it's got its issues. The main thing for me is the controls. You can put a Wi-Fi dongle in there. It's a bit hit and miss. There's a few things on this that are hit and miss, like the way the controllers didn't work. And I think there's been software updates that make some settings stop working afterwards, so they have to little tinker with that. So I'd say overall, if you just want to play a load of old games for not much money, this is brilliant. If you want to do a load of tinkering and you're really into it, then this is really cool for that. But if you're kind of in the middle and you want a bit of messing, but you don't want to get that deep in it, and things are going to go wrong because you're going to update stuff, maybe stay away from it. So yeah, who's got one? I think it's kind of cool, just not as amazing as everyone says. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. So that was the R36 from various companies. If you are interested in it, I think there's probably going to be a link in the description. If it is, it'll help the channel use it. Otherwise, but you probably know where to get these from. You see them advertised everywhere. They're probably on Amazon, TikTok Shop, whatever. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video or it helped, do give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumb us down. And until next time, play safe.